It started with love. It ended in blood. One moment, they were the couple everyone admired, young, beautiful, untouchable. The next, the world was watching a nightmare unfold in real time. A single moment of rejection. A single moment of rage. And then, silence. How does love turn into something unrecognizable? What happens when control takes the place of trust, when obsession pushes past the point of no return? This is the story of Zaire Montrell and Janai Ellison, a love story that should have never ended the way it did. Before we dive into this shocking case, like this video and subscribe. Because the truth is more disturbing than you can imagine. Janai Ellison was everything social media adored, stunning, ambitious, and unapologetically herself. At just 27, she had built a thriving career as a hairstylist, her Instagram flooded with flawless transformations, luxury vacations, and glimpses into her seemingly perfect life. She had a massive following, drawn to her confidence, her beauty, and her unfiltered takes on love and independence. She didn't just live life, she owned it. She had no patience for mediocrity, and she made that clear in her unfiltered takes on love and relationships. A man needs to bring something to the table, she once said in a live stream that went viral. I refuse to settle for less than I deserve. Women applauded her. Men either admired her or seethed in the comments. But one thing was certain, Janai commanded attention. Then came Zaire Montrell. Zaire, 32, was the man every woman wanted, at least, that's what he wanted people to believe. A self-proclaimed entrepreneur, he flaunted designer clothes, flashy cars, and stacks of cash in his social media posts. He moved like a king, carried himself like one, and expected to be treated as such. But beneath the carefully curated image, Zaire was drowning in debt, drowning in losses from gambling, drowning in the fear that if people looked too closely, they'd see the cracks in his empire. Women had come and gone, each one seduced by his charm before discovering the man behind the illusion. At first, Zaire was every woman's dream, attentive, affectionate, a provider. But that love came with rules. He had to know where you were at all times. Who you were with. Why you took too long to text back. And if you ever tried to leave. That's when the real Zaire showed himself. Amira Caldwell had learned the hard way. She'd fallen fast, swept up in Zaire's intoxicating attention, only to realize it was never love, it was ownership. He accused her of cheating when she didn't answer his calls. He showed up unannounced when she went out with friends, lurking in the background, waiting for her to notice. When she finally left, the calls didn't stop. The messages piled up. I just want to talk. I miss you. You don't get to do this to me. Amira wasn't the only one. Tasha had moved out of state to escape him. Keisha had changed her number. They had all been his, and then they had all become his enemies. But none of them had been Janai. None of them had the influence she did. None of them had the power to bruise his ego the way she could. When Zaire and Janai got together, they became a power couple, at least on the surface. Lavish date nights, matching outfits, and over-the-top Instagram captions made them look unstoppable. They played the game perfectly, feeding their followers a fantasy that had everyone watching. But perfection is a mask, and behind the scenes, the cracks were already forming. Zaire controlled her, softly at first, in ways that felt like love. I just don't want nobody disrespecting you, baby. You're mine. Then it got tighter. Why you gotta wear that? You know how dudes look at you. Then it became suffocating. I don't like when you go out without me. Janai was strong-willed, but Zaire knew how to play on her emotions. He made her feel like resisting him meant she didn't love him enough. That giving in meant they were solid. That being his was a privilege. And when Janai got pregnant, Zaire believed he had finally sealed their bond forever. But Janai had no plans of being tied to a man who was already choking the life out of her. She wasn't keeping the baby. And when she told Zaire, she didn't just challenge him. She shattered him. Janai wasn't ready for a baby. Not with Zaire. Not with a man who had slowly turned her world into a cage. She had spent too many years grinding for success, too many late nights perfecting her craft, too many sacrifices to let it all come to a halt because of one mistake. A baby meant being tied to him forever. A baby meant no escape. She had wrestled with the decision for days, running through every scenario in her mind. Could she do this alone? Could she trust him to be a father? Could she really bring a child into a world where its father saw love as ownership? No. So, she told him. She should have known he would react badly, but nothing could have prepared her for the look in his eyes when she said the words. "You not finna kill my baby, Janai." His voice was low, steady, but there was something underneath it, something dark, something dangerous. "You mine. That baby mine." She took a breath, trying to stay calm. "Zaire, I'm not ready for this. I need to do what's best for me." His expression didn't change, but his fists clenched at his sides. "What's best for you? What about what's best for us?" "There is no us, Zaire," she said carefully. "Not like that." And that's when she saw it, the crack in his mask. The way his lips pressed together, his nostrils flared. The way his eyes darkened, the cold calculation setting in. She had just shattered him. And when a man like Zaire Montrell breaks, he doesn't fall apart. He destroys. From that moment on, something shifted. The texts became relentless. "You really doing this to me? You not thinking straight, baby? Let's talk. I love you, Janai. I don't want to lose you." Then the calls. At all hours. When she ignored him, the voicemails turned into threats wrapped in love. "I don't want nobody else having you. You don't get to walk away from me. You think I'm just gone, let this happen." He started showing up. At her salon, waiting outside in his car. At her apartment, knocking at her door even though she never gave him a key. She could feel him closing in, like a shadow that stretched too far, creeping into places he didn't belong. And then came the posts. Zaire knew exactly how to get under her skin, how to pull the strings to make her feel him, even when she was trying to escape. He started posting cryptic messages online, the kind designed to make people ask questions. "Loyalty ain't real no more. A real man provides, but a weak woman don't recognize a blessing. Betrayal cut deeper than a knife." His followers ate it up, flooding his comments with support, calling him a king, telling him he deserved better. They didn't know they were feeding a fire that was already burning out of control. Janai confided in Amira Douglas, her best friend since childhood. Amira had never liked Zaire, had always said there was something off about him. Now, she wasn't holding back. "Girl, you need to leave him before he does something crazy." Janai shook her head, exhausted. "He just needs time. He'll get over it." Amira's lips tightened. "You really believe that?" Janai wanted to. She needed to. Because the alternative? The idea that she had gotten too close to something she couldn't control. That was a reality she wasn't ready to face. But she wouldn't have a choice. Because Zaire Montrell wasn't the type to let go. March 24, 2024. Janai stepped out of her car, gripping her purse tighter than usual. Her gut told her not to be here. She should have ignored his texts, blocked his number, and left town if she had to. But something about Zaire, the way he begged, the way he pleaded for just one conversation, made her believe she could end this the right way. One last talk. One last goodbye. She climbed the stairs to his apartment, her heels clicking against the concrete. The door was already cracked open, a dim glow spilling from inside. Zaire? He was waiting for her in the living room, seated on the couch like he had been expecting her for hours. His posture was relaxed, his hands folded in his lap, but his eyes, those dark, empty eyes, were locked onto her like a predator sizing up its prey. Come in, he said smoothly. I got your favorite. She glanced at the bottle of wine on the coffee table, 2 glasses already poured. She hesitated. I won't be long, she said, closing the door behind her. I just came to say. Sit down. The sharpness in his voice made her flinch. She sat, but only on the edge of the couch, her body tense. Zaire slid a glass toward her. His fingers twitched as he watched her, waiting. She didn't touch it. I'm not keeping it, Zaire, she said, her voice firm but exhausted. I'm not changing my mind. And I'm done with us. Silence. His breathing grew heavier, his fingers drumming against his knee. You really gon' do this to me? His voice was eerily steady. You really gon' kill my kid like it don't mean nothing? Janai sighed, rubbing her temples. Zaire, it's my choice. The first stab came before she could finish the sentence. A sickening SHLCK filled the air as the knife buried itself deep into her stomach. Janai gasped, eyes wide, hands instinctively flying to her abdomen. When she pulled them back, they were drenched in crimson. Her scream ripped through the apartment. Zaire yanked the knife out, and blood gushed from the wound, soaking her dress, spilling onto the floor. Her body jerked as another stab followed, the blade sinking in with ease. Then another. And another. The pain was unbearable, her screams turning to wet, gurgling gasps. She tried to crawl away, her hands slipping in the growing pool of her own blood. But Zaire wasn't done. He grabbed a fistful of her hair and yanked her back, flipping her onto her back. She looked up at him, her vision blurring. His face was twisted, not with rage, but something far more terrifying. Satisfaction. He drove the knife into her chest, twisting it cruelly. Her body convulsed, her mouth opening in a silent scream. Blood bubbled from her lips. The live stream comments were flying. Oh shit, WTF. This nigga really did it. She should have stayed loyal. Zaire watched the screen out of the corner of his eye, a sick grin spreading across his face. The world was watching. Just how he planned. Janai's body spasmed one final time before going still. The light faded from her eyes, her chest barely rising. A choked breath rattled from her lips, then nothing. The room was eerily silent, except for the drip, drip, drip of blood pooling onto the floor. Zaire stood over her, panting, his hands drenched in her life. He wiped the knife on his shirt, then reached for his phone. The comments were still rolling in, a mix of horror, disbelief, and twisted admiration. He stared into the camera, his voice chillingly calm. She thought she could play me. A beat of silence. Then he smirked. Now she ain't playin' nobody no more. With one final swipe, he ended the live. Amira was pacing her living room, her heart hammering. She had called Janai 3 times already. No answer. That wasn't like her. She texted. Girl, you good? No response. Her stomach tightened. Janai always responded, even if just to say she was busy. Something wasn't right. She pulled up Janai's location. Still at Zaire's apartment. Amira's fingers trembled as she hit dial again. Straight to voicemail. Her chest tightened. This wasn't just a bad feeling anymore, this was something worse. She grabbed her keys and flew out the door. By the time the police arrived at Zaire's apartment, the scene inside was pure horror. Janai's body lay sprawled on the floor, dried blood painting the hardwood in thick, dark smears. The room smelled of death, metallic, sour, suffocating. Her eyes, once full of life, stared blankly at the ceiling. The officers exchanged grim looks. There was no doubt, this was personal. This was rage. This was a man who wanted to make sure she never walked away. But Zaire was gone. The apartment was eerily untouched, aside from the crime scene itself. A half-empty glass of wine sat on the coffee table. A knife block in the kitchen, one blade missing. A single shoe near the door, as if she had been trying to run. And then, one officer's radio crackled. "Do y'all see this shit?" A voice buzzed over the airwaves. The video had already gone viral. Janai's murder had been broadcasted, live. By the time the police found her body, the world had already watched her die. The internet was in chaos. Her followers were in shock, grief pouring through every social platform. R.I.P. Janai started trending within hours. But there was another side, one that made people sick to their stomachs. There were men just like Zaire, who defended him. She played with his emotions. What did she expect? Women think they can just do whatever they want. Y'all love to call men toxic but ignore how women push them to this point. The discourse was everywhere. News outlets picked it up. Talk shows debated it. Was this about toxic masculinity? Power? Control? But one thing was undeniable, Zaire was out there, somewhere, and now he was one of the most wanted men in America. The manhunt began. Zaire Montrell thought he had it all figured out. He had ditched his car outside of town, hopped on a bus to Houston, and checked into a rundown motel under a fake name. His plan was simple: lay low, get some cash, and disappear for good. But what he didn't realize was that the world was already hunting him. The live stream had made him infamous. His face was everywhere, on the news, on social media, on wanted posters plastered across the internet. Strangers dissected his every move, turning into amateur detectives. Someone had seen him at a gas station. Another had spotted him boarding a Greyhound. A motel clerk recognized him from a TikTok video. And then, the tip that sealed his fate, an anonymous call to U.S. Marshals. "They're here," Zaire muttered under his breath, peeking through the dusty motel blinds. His heart pounded. Flashing red and blue lights painted the parking lot, creeping closer like death itself. A loud knock. "Zaire Montrell. We know you're in there. Open the door." Silence. Then, bam. The door flew off its hinges. The marshals swarmed in, weapons drawn. Zaire lunged for the bathroom window, but it was too late. Hands yanked him back, slammed him to the floor. "Get the fuck off me!" He screamed, thrashing, his face crushed against the filthy carpet. But no one was listening. Click. The cold bite of handcuffs locked around his wrists. His days of control were over. The trial was brutal. The prosecution didn't need to paint a picture of the crime, Zaire had already done that himself. They played the live stream in full, forcing the jury, the judge, and Janai's grieving family to relive every horrifying second. Janai's mother sobbed so hard she had to be escorted out. Amira sat stone-faced, her fists clenched, hatred burning in her eyes. Zaire showed no emotion. No remorse. He sat there, blank-faced, as if none of it mattered. But the world saw him for what he was. The jury took only 2 hours to decide his fate. Guilty. The judge didn't hesitate. "Mr. Montrell," he said, his voice cold and final, "you wanted the world to witness your control. Now the world will watch you die in a cell. Sentence, life without parole." As the guards led him away, the cameras flashed, reporters shouting his name. But the world had already moved on. Zaire Montrell was no longer a king. No longer a man of power. Just another monster locked away, left to rot in the darkness he created. Janai Ellison's funeral was unlike anything her family had ever imagined. It wasn't supposed to be this way. She was supposed to be celebrating another business milestone, traveling the world, laughing with Amira over brunch, posting another flawless selfie that made people admire and envy her in equal measure. Instead, she was in a casket, her life stolen in the most horrific way possible, broadcasted for the world to see. The service was packed, with people spilling out of the church doors. Her family sat in the front row, their faces hollow with grief. Her mother hadn't spoken much since the trial, her tears dried up, her pain beyond words. Her father sat rigidly, staring straight ahead, his hands clenched so tightly that his nails dug into his palms. And Amira couldn't shake the guilt. She had tried to warn Janai. She had seen the red flags from the start, the way Zaire's love felt more like possession. But she hadn't tried hard enough. Hadn't pushed Janai to leave him when she had the chance. Now, all she had left were memories and the sickening knowledge that her best friend's final moments had been entertainment for millions. The funeral was streamed live, just like everything in Janai's life. Thousands of people watched from their phones and laptops, leaving comments filled with heartbreak, rage, and disbelief. Some mourned her. Others dissected her life, turning her into a cautionary tale. She should have never been with him. Why do women ignore the signs? She deserved better. Rest in peace, Queen. And then there were the ones who made Amira sick. The ones who still defended Zaire. She betrayed him first. She had no right to kill his kid. He just lost control. She played with the wrong one. Zaire Montrell sat in a maximum security prison, but his story wasn't over. The internet never forgets. The video of Janai's murder still circulated in the darkest corners of the web, shared by those who fed off violence and control. Some idolized him, calling him a man who refused to be disrespected. Others saw him for what he was, a monster. But none of it changed the reality. Janai was gone. Her voice, her laughter, her fire, snuffed out. Her mother would never get to see her walk down the aisle. Her clients would never sit in her chair again, letting her work her magic. Amira would never get another late-night FaceTime call filled with gossip and laughter. Zaire had taken all of that away. And the most horrifying part? The world had watched it happen in real time. This case is more than just a tragic love story gone wrong, it is a chilling reminder of how obsession, control, and rejection can turn deadly. It forces us to ask uncomfortable but necessary questions. How does love, something meant to be nurturing and uplifting, morph into something possessive and destructive? What makes a person believe they have the right to dictate another's life, their choices, their very existence? And how many times do we see the red flags, only to brush them aside until it's too late? Janai Ellison had everything, a thriving business, a massive social media following, a bright future ahead of her. She was young, beautiful, successful. By all appearances, she was in control of her life. But control, real control, isn't always what it seems. From the outside, her relationship with Zaire Montrell looked like a dream, two attractive, ambitious people in love, building something together. But behind closed doors, the cracks were already forming. The possessiveness, the manipulation, the slow suffocation of Janai's independence. And when she made the choice for herself, to not have his baby, to leave him, Zaire saw it as the ultimate betrayal. NAL moments weren't just suffered in silence, they were broadcasted for the world to see. A world that was horrified, yet couldn't look away. Her murder became viral content, her last breath a spectacle for strangers to comment on, analyze, and debate. And while the legal system moved swiftly, ensuring that Zaire would spend the rest of his life behind bars, the damage had already been done. Janai's family will never get her back. Amira will always carry the guilt of not being able to save her. And the internet will forever be haunted by the knowledge that they didn't just hear about a crime after the fact, they witnessed it unfold in real time. So we have to ask ourselves, what could have been done differently? How do we recognize the warning signs in time? How do we protect those who don't yet realize they need saving? And most importantly, how do we make sure that the next Janai never becomes another headline, another viral tragedy, another woman whose voice was silenced too soon? If this story shocked you, like and subscribe for more cases that explore the darkest intersections of love, lies, and betrayal.